If you would like to earn CPE credit for listening to the show, visit earmarkcpe.com/FPA. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Finally, if you enjoy listening to FP&A today, please go to your podcast platform of choice, click the subscribe button, and leave a rating and review of the show. And now, on to the show.
From Data Rails, this is FP&A Today.
Welcome to FP&A Today. I'm your host, Glenn Hopper. Today, we have a fantastic guest who's redefining what it means to be a modern finance leader. Bill Hanna is a CPA, seasoned controller, and the founder of The Financial Controller, an education platform helping finance professionals level up their careers. With a background spanning public accounting, private industry, and leadership roles at high-growth companies, Bill has mastered the art of bridging technical accounting with strategic finance. Beyond his corporate experience, he's built a massive following, over 250,000 subscribers on YouTube, where he simplifies complex accounting topics and shares real-world insights. Today, we'll dive into the evolving role of controllers, how FP&A and accounting can work better together, and what's next in finance leadership. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Glenn. You make it sound so good, man. I appreciate the intro.
Yeah, it was easy one to write. You've done some pretty cool things that I can't wait to dive in. We've heard my words. Let's now turn it around and have you tell us about your background and kind of take us back and tell us what led you to a career in accounting and what attracted you to the controllership path.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually stumbled into accounting. It wasn't by any sort of design. My first bachelor's degree was in hotel management and travel agency work. So that was back in 1999, 2000. And back then, that was the beginning of the online travel agencies taking over the world, and sort of the traditional travel agent model is going away at that time. And so I wanted to jump ship because that wasn't going to work. That's when I migrated to the US in 99. And I've taken a couple of college courses when I came to the US. And just by chance, I've taken a course with an accounting professor, Professor Dauper. I hope he's listening. And he is the reason why I got into accounting. And it's a story that I've heard from others too, like where you see one professor, you kind of admire, their personality, the work they do, and how do you talk about the profession. So he was talking about what he does with love. He ran a CPA firm and he taught accounting at the local college. And he just sounded like he was just having a good time with his job. And he just sounded like a really great guy. So I decided to do that. And then I went to work for PwC right after college. I did a couple of years there, and I just looked at how overworked and sort of tired, the professionals who kind of progress and stay till the partnership route. And I just decided that's not something that I was going to do. So I started looking around what to do next. And the traditional routes were either to go to private industry accounting or equity research. There's also other things like internal audit and things like that. So I wanted to do equity research at the time, I remember. But then when I looked at the people who were doing that, I realized that they're probably smarter than me, and I'm just not gonna make the cut for this kind of work. And so I looked at private industry, and then I took a job as an accounting analyst with a startup, and then sort of took it from there, going from one industry to the other without any specific plan to take over anything. It was more just like learning some skill set in this job and then going to the next. And I spent about maybe 2 to 3 years in each job. And I often speak about it in my videos on the benefit of working in maybe 7 different places in my career over the span of 18 years, where I've gathered, from an accounting software standpoint, like I know how to work with SAP, NetSuite, Sage Intacct, QuickBooks. I wouldn't have learned all of these systems and, different processes and philosophy of different controllers that I worked under if I haven't done that. So yeah, that's how I ended up in the controller route.
We're going to talk, the technical part of this, but you mentioned, it was a professor that brought you into accounting, and then thinking about the different controllers that you worked with. And I guess before we dive into the technical part, 18 years in your career, is there something that stands out as a lesson that you've learned in accounting leadership? And, to be have these people who influenced your career and brought you into accounting to begin with. I think a lot of times we overlook sort of the personal side of this or the soft skills and the leadership part. So I'm wondering if there's anything that stands out to you on the leadership side from your career.
Yeah. So that's a benefit of working under many CFOs and controllers. Is learning their different styles and the different things that they prioritize and how they mentor and coach. One of the things I learned is talking to my staff about their career progression often, realizing that this is what they're here for. It's really, they're here for what? For the paycheck and for their career progression. They're not here because I am a great guy. They're not here because this company is a great company. They're only here for their career progression. So having that sort of become the focal point of discussion in our one-on-one, not every week, but maybe every couple of weeks, we'll kind of bring it back and like how are we progressing toward what you already trying to do. Teaching staff about advanced stuff. So like oftentimes your staff is doing the mundane, the daily stuff, but then taking some time to walk them through a more advanced topic like transfer pricing or consolidation or things that they don't really do on a normal daily basis or at all sometimes, help them kind of realize, okay, here's what's waiting for me in the future. And, this person cares enough to kind of talk to me about these things and get me exposed to them. Talking to my staff about mistakes that I make. I think this is an important one because a lot of times some bosses that I've had, their style is to talk about only the good things and not talk about the bad things, the mistakes that they've made. It makes you human, it makes you relatable, and it makes it easy for them to come to you when they made a mistake themselves. The other things too is that, and I wrote some notes here because I knew this question was coming. Looking at the accounting function as a factory and sort of realizing what should be done by a robot. So like you can just look quickly and say like, I don't want my staff spending time on this because this is just going to erode their self-worth, just working on this day in and day out. Right. So kind of have that ability to identify. And then maybe you're not going to have the budget to invest in technology for all these things all at once. But at least if you identify them and keep them in a parking lot sort of thing and, get back to them, sort of tackling the ones that you can as much as you can. So, yeah, these are maybe the four things that I've learned in terms of like leading a team.
That's great. Thinking about automation, that's a topic that's near and dear to my heart with technology, whether it's AI or just rule-based automation and everything that's going on out there right now with agents. And thinking about, there's a quote, and I've got to refer to it here. I used to have it memorized, but I haven't used it in a while. Hang on one sec. The quote is by a guy named Clifford Stoll, and it is, data is not information. Information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not understanding. And understanding is not wisdom. And I think about that all the time as sort of a pyramid that the value that we bring to a company. And so talking about that mundane stuff at the beginning, that's the lowest level data entry, taking data, turning it into information, but then you've got to kind of move it up the chain. And I think as automation gets more accessible, and you mentioned budget, and there's still, depending on the size of the company, what's going on, we're not going to be able to have it all at once. But I do think the technology is quickly getting there where, RPA used to take months to set up, but now you're looking at these computer use agents that can go in and be set up in 5 minutes to do those mundane tasks. So I think that's an important thing to focus on. And when I first started in finance, we didn't have a field called FP&A. And a lot of the stuff that FP&A does was done by the controller back then. And I think that as FP&A has branched off and developed as a field, there can be this sort of chasm between accounting and finance. And I think for our FP&A audience, how do you define the role of a controller today, and how have you seen it evolve over the years?
So the role of the controller, if you think of a traditional sense of a controller, you're running the accounting function, which breaks down broadly into accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, and maybe the smaller processes that go along with these. Like, if you talk on payroll, then you have like the employment tax and compliance and reporting and stuff like that. But then also you have the other side, which is running an external audit. So typically a controller is looked at to run the operational side of the audit. distinguish between the operational side and the strategic side of the audit. So you have maybe a VP of finance or a CFO running the strategic side of the audit, which is discussing with the auditors the presentation of certain items on the financials and things that will benefit maybe the way the financials are presented. But the operational side is typically run by the controller. The accounting function, APAR, payroll, audit, and then you have the development of the staff under you. How this have changed over the time period that I've worked as a controller. With technology, obviously things have been changing a lot. I'll say that the role of automation has been such that the number of people that you need for a certain function would be reduced. And that's a statement, and I get that question sometimes from my audience and from people in general. What's going to happen to the profession with automation? So it's not that their jobs will be less in accounting. My theory is that people who work in certain function will be less. So if you need 2 or 3 people to run accounts payable, you're only going to need 1. What is going to happen to the rest of the workforce that's been doing all of these tasks? If you look at new industries like, just to take one example, like Flowcast, which is a software that's used to close the books. If you look at their headcount and the people that work there, many of these people who are now, the sales development reps and people who work for the solution team, these are all accountants, right? So I think with automation, is just you're going to see a distribution of the workforce from one area to another, and not so much sort of jobs vanishing. It's just that they're going to get shifted and redistributed. So that's what I've been seeing in my career is, if I needed on my team 20 people 15 years ago, now I'm going to need just 10. The other portion, will go to either system admin, sales, solution. This is sort of the shifts that have been happening over the last decade and a half, maybe.
And it's interesting. I agree with you on that. Right now, there's a shortage of accountants as the older generation of accountants is retiring, and the pipeline, there are not as many accounting grads as there were, a few years ago. So there is a shortage, but at the same time, there's this balance with the automation, and it feels like, it's if you let market forces sort it out, the fact that there are fewer people coming into accounting, more retiring and not being replaced, and the technology moving right now. I mean, maybe the crisis is overblown and maybe it'll sort out. I don't know. Are you seeing or hearing from any of the people you talk to? Is there a sense right now that there aren't enough accountants to do the work, or do you get a sense of that?
Yeah, 100%. You see that in the data, and like I was looking at Robert Half salary guide for 2025, and the numbers went up by maybe like 10% compared to 2024. And that's not inflation. Inflation is just maybe 3 or 4%. And so that represents the shortage in the market. And it's a funny shortage because it's like a funnel where like the entry-level jobs are diminishing because of automation and AI. And I will say automation only because I haven't seen AI taking over sort of or reducing the number of headcount needed. It's more automation.
Yeah.
And I sort of distinguish between the two because automation has been around for maybe 15 years, whereas AI is just a new kid on the block. But this shortage is an interesting kind of uneven shortage because you have on one hand the high demand for the talent that has experience and then sort of lower demand on the talent that is entry level. And so this is one to watch and to see like where we're going to end up here because it's an interesting one. Like how do you get experienced staff if you don't get them to become entry level to begin with, right?
That's what I think about. Yeah. So nobody goes and gets a master's in accounting because they want to do data entry, but it's sort of when you come in, you're learning as you're doing the lower level stuff, and it's you're internalizing it and it's making sense. And now, if the expectation is we don't need you for the lower level stuff, we're going to throw you in at a higher, decision point, and kind of moving up that pyramid I was just talking about. That's a stressful situation to be in, where you're just straight out of college, first time in the workforce, and having the expectation is higher.
Yeah, and also to add insult to injury, the decision that's been made in the U.S. to increase the requirement for the CPA license 10 years ago, now thankfully it's been reversed, where like now the AI CPA is looking at it and saying, listen, like we're going to have a real crisis here if we don't reduce the barrier to entry. So I think that that's going to help somewhat alleviate the pain. And I see that in the comments. I have this video that I created, and I have comments on it that keep coming in every day, where people are saying, now I'm thinking to go the accounting route and take my CPA now that we're back to the 120 hours, or potentially back. It's not really fully back in only maybe a couple of states, but I think slowly it's going to get there. But that's a really helpful thing to see, and I have some hope now that people will begin to take that route.
FP&A Today is brought to you by DataRails, the world's #1 FP&A solution. DataRails is the artificial intelligence-powered financial planning and analysis platform built for Excel users. That's right, you can stay in Excel. But instead of facing hell for every budget, month-end close, or forecast, you can enjoy a paradise of data consolidation, advanced visualization, reporting, and AI capabilities. Plus game-changing insights giving you instant answers and your story created in seconds. Find out why more than 1,000 finance teams use DataRails to uncover their company's real story. Don't replace Excel, embrace Excel. Learn more at datarails.com. I had this question I was going to ask later in the show, but I think this is probably a good transition point to what you're doing now with the financial controller and the videos and the education platform and everything. Because I'm thinking about, whether someone is brand new in their career or mid-career, or, even someone that has experience but just trying to level up in a way. Tell me about what led you to start it, how long you've been doing it, and the kinds of courses and videos you're doing for the financial controller.
I started completely by accident. I was taking a executive coaching training with someone, and this lady, I wish I remember her name. She was really good. She came out of California to coach us here in New York City. And part of the coaching was each of us would have to do a presentation on a whiteboard. And when I was doing mine, she just made a comment, and she's like, gee, like when you're up there on the whiteboard, you just seem like you're in your element and you're really enjoying it. So I went home and I came up with the idea that I'll do a video on, I think it was Enron or one other firm. And I didn't even do that good of a job, to be honest. Like now when I look at that video and I'm like, I missed some of the things that Enron did that was pretty big. And the video was not that awesome. I would do a much better one now if I do. I checked and I got like many views. So I said, I'll do some of these explainer videos on whiteboard, and it kind of took off from there. My concept from the channel and my courses was that maybe I'm not going to teach you something that is completely new to you, because frankly, a lot of the stuff that I teach is stuff that it's either public knowledge, like it's available somewhere. I'm not inventing anything. It's just the same stuff that I learn and I'm teaching. But the feedback that I've gotten was that it's really helpful to see someone doing and confirming what you already know. So like, hey, I'm good. Like, I've been doing this for years, and this guy is showing it, and I'm good. Like this is the same way I've been doing it. Then I'm right. Or be like, hey, like, there's a slightly different way to do things. Maybe I'll check it out. Or see like, oh crap, I've been doing this wrong. Let me kind of revise and do things and look it up and see maybe I can correct. So that was the YouTube channel. And then I came up with the idea, like, if people are enjoying my 10-minute videos and someone said like, hey, in your 10-minute video, I learned like a semester of college. So I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll do something then that will be like a more involved, like a 6 to 8 hour course that visits everything to do with the controller function. And that's where the Controller Academy came. And I wanted to do it in a way that's different than any of the other courses out there. So I created a company and I called it Spa Booker. It's like a SaaS company. And I said, the entire course is centered around this company. So we will record the equity, the stock options. We'll create a chart of accounts from scratch. We'll set up payroll, how to operationalize, payroll, accounts payable, receivable, all of these things using a company. Because I noticed that the other products out there are just really talking about the theory of accounting and not so much like how to apply it on a daily basis in an accounting setting. So the reviews have been good. I've gotten 4.9 stars from many people. Yeah, so it's been rewarding. So my philosophy is to use company examples and to tell a story, because my experience from in college and any other course that I've taken is that if I'm not engaged in what the instructor is saying, I will lose interest really fast. And so I'll make it engaging. I'll give you practice. So I'll give you then access to the accounting software in the course. I'll give you the Excel file, and I'll tell you in the video, okay, here's what you need to do with this. Do it as a practice, and then submit it back. Have quizzes. So you go in there, you're expected to take quizzes and earn your certificate of graduation. So yeah, it's been fun so far.
That's great. And how long has Controller Academy been around?
2023 is when it started.
Wow. You're the single professor on this? Are these all your courses, or have you brought in others to help with it? Or
so I brought in. Recently, we just launched the FP&A Academy. So I brought in Connor Beck, who is the FP&A manager or senior manager at my previous company at Fodor. And we worked together. We kind of joked about it when I was at Fodor. I'm like, hey, maybe we'll do a course together on FP&A. And he's like, yeah, sure, ha ha ha. But it was really just like a comment. But then we sat down and at the end of 2024, and we outlined it and got it done in about maybe 3 months. And it's the same concept. So we're taking one company from the beginning and we're saying, okay, how do we create a 5-year plan? How do we create an annual budget? What is the 3-step model look like? How do you present to management? What is important to present? And how do you create those PowerPoint slides? And all of the things. So he really wanted to mimic his function as an FP&A manager in the course. And so it's been good so far. I think we have about 100 people in that course in just a month and a half. So it's been fun. And then I also brought in my other friend who does corporate taxation, and we created the Tax Academy as well, which is more of a US-centric course because of the nature of the tax. But the other courses are I have students from all over the world.
That's great. That's great. Well, I was checking out the website before the show, and it looks like a lot of great content out there. So very, very impressive website there. So, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes too. Now that you have FP&A at the Controller Academy as well, I think that, again, taking it back to our FP&A audience, what's the key to a strong relationship between FP&A and the controllers team, and like thinking about where that handoff is and sort of the expectation in both directions between both departments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think these two functions are like buddies, really. Like really, these are two kids playing on the playground, and they really should be friends. I think that the key here is building enough rapport and friendship to the point where feedback, like you get feedback and you get good insight from your counterpart in FP&A. So for me as a controller, I remember this once where we were doing a presentation. The company was small enough where when we did accruals on the employee bonuses, we just accrued the annual amounts and or the quarterly amounts and just had the accrual in there. So after the meeting, my FP&A counterpart, she came to me and she's like, listen, like the way my previous company done it is that not only that you accrue for the bonus, but you'd have to look at the taxes, the employer taxes associated with them in the accrual as well. So when we were small enough as a company, this was not an issue. But her insight is that as we are growing now and, we're approaching an event, most likely in the near term, this can come up as a material weakness. And so you get these nuggets of experience from other people if you have the relationship with them. And so I think that's why you need to foster that relationship in a way that it becomes like just a really good bond where the other person feels like it's easy to talk to you and just tell you what, share their experiences. Strategic partnership, you are presenting information at month end or at year end, and they need to have that trust in your numbers because that's what they're working with. And you need to have their numbers as well to kind of soundboard and be sure that you have good numbers as well. to compare to their budget and their plan and see where you fall short or maybe extra and make corrections. Yeah, I think that relationship is really important.
Talking about the opportunity to work for so many different controllers and how much you learn. And I think that you also learn from the other departments, whether it's business partnering, in the business unit or just within the office of the CFO, the controllership and accounting side and the FP&A side and treasury and tax and all that. Like you learn from working with the others. And I think what you're doing at the Controller Academy is very interesting to me. I kind of came into finance through a side door. Like after my MBA, I was in marketing, and I ended up in coming into finance, but I didn't roll up to the CFO. I rolled up to the COO, and it was just I was kind of outsider looking in, and I ended up, if I had a weakness in the beginning, it was I'd never worked in accounting. I'd taken the courses, of course, but it's a lot different between what you do in academia and out in the real world. So it was a lot of learning on the fly for me. And there weren't, this was a million years ago, so there weren't all the online courses out there and everything. But like, I really appreciate what you're doing with the Controller Academy, that you are now adding the tax and the FP&A in that. And I'm thinking, again, bringing it back to our FP&A listeners, I talk to people all the time that come in, first they do accounting and then they move into FP&A, but a lot of them are just, straight into finance. So if someone were looking to kind of round out their whole finance and accounting skill set and soft skills and everything that they needed, because they want to move up, hopefully to become a CFO someday. And, it used to be, if you didn't have a CPA, forget it. You're not going to move up that. And that certainly has changed in recent years, but you still have to have this skill set and you have to be able to round out that whole picture. So what would you advise someone who maybe they're an accounting manager or or an entry-level accountant, and they tell, you were talking about career progression before, if they know they want to move up and move, to CAO or CFO or whatever it is, ultimately, what skills do they need to start working on to get that full picture?
I get that question sometimes where like, what do I need to learn to get to a CFO? Yeah, I think it's really easy, right? Because when you look at a CFO, they know accounting, they know financial analysis, they must have gone through a period where they learn Excel. And so when someone is asking me, like, should I learn accounting or financial analysis or Excel or what else? And my answer is like, learn them all, because, it's really like when I think of the CFOs that I worked with in the past, right? On a higher level, they're all strategic thinkers, right? That's what makes a successful CFO. You're able to scan the environment and identify risks. I was just a quick example, driving up the road today, and I saw a truck, a Fresh Direct. Do you remember? Do you remember Fresh Direct? These deliver food.
That's vaguely, yeah.
Yeah. So exactly, right? Fresh Direct. It was the biggest player. Did their CFO scan and see that the Amazon Fresh was going to come in and take their market? I don't know, but that's exactly the kind of thing, right? And now me running a small company like the Controller Academy, I'm like, what's the biggest thing that's the next thing that's going to come and just like take the market away from me, right? So that's what the CFO should be doing, is what is the risk? And so if your goal is to be a CFO, you need to be that strategic thinker. That doesn't come from one course or one skill. That comes from real life exposure to problems and their solutions on a daily basis. So you need to get your hands dirty with actual work and talking to banks and raising money from either debt or equity and understanding how to remedy certain situations like that. But in terms of sort of the core skills, if we're talking about the things that you can take a course for, because risk management, there are courses for that, but I don't think they really teach you what real life can teach you on these things. But yeah, like just at least equip yourself with the basics that you need to know, like, the accounting knowledge, the analysis, just the basic thought process of where do you begin building a budget? How does an income statement connect into a cash flow statement, into a balance sheet? Like, how do they work in harmony together? So these are the basic things. And I've been surprised to see people enrolling in my Controller Academy who are CFOs of 10,000 employee companies, and like, why are you enrolled in my? That's what I've been thinking. Like, why are you enrolled in my academy if you are already a CFO? And the thing is, like, I know how to do the strategic thinking, but I just don't know what my controller is doing. So I need to learn what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. As you're trying to develop those skills, and I think you really nailed it, saying, you've got to kind of be in the seat and see what's going on. And it can be difficult if there's an accounting shortage and you're you're understaffed or whatever, and you're heads down and you're just laser focused on the task at hand. And I think that you were talking about leadership earlier. I think that one of the great opportunities as a leader is if you can help your team to, we're all busy, but we're going to pull out and we're going to, like you said, expose them to other areas of accounting that they may not have worked with before, transfer pricing and consolidation, and just getting them that broader expertise. Because especially with so many remote workers now, it's hard to find that time to isolate and pick an employee and say, let me help, we're going to coach here and work on a new skill set and all that. And that's part of leadership too. If you want to move up to CFO, being able to build up a team, that's just, it's all part of it. And I think giving them access to tools like the Controller Academy, or even if they have time to watch videos for the short learning experience, and then they've got to have the passion for it too. That why are we here? Yes, to get a paycheck, but also to move forward and sort of that continuous learning. So it's amazing what you're doing there. So tell me, let's go back to the YouTube channel again. Like thinking about those videos, because that's the kind of content that is just, it's easily digestible and you could almost take it for granted, but you're putting a lot of effort into it and offering up some valuable lessons. So take me through, like, how frequently do you put out videos? What's the normal length on the videos there? And what are some sample topics you've covered?
Yeah, absolutely. So I try to post once a week. I try to make my videos around 10 to 20 minutes. I've been criticized by my viewers for making longer videos. So it seems like at least the newer generation, their attention span is like, keep it under 10 minutes. Okay, fine. We'll try to keep it under 10 minutes. I started out with things that are searchable. So I would go into YouTube or Google search and find the keywords that are most searched. But then I began to move away from that when I started doing videos on things that are not searched, but more like you're not searching for it because you don't know it. So I'll kind of give you what I think you should be searching for, almost kind of thing. And so like I did a video on how to turn a trial balance into a balance sheet. Like no one has really ever searched that topic before. But that video, gathered 100,000 views in just maybe a month. And that gave me that concept of like, if you are thinking it as an individual who works in accounting, the chances are there's plenty of other people are thinking it as well. And so I am trying to keep that going. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna keep it going, where like I'm trying to think of inspiration from the problems that I've been facing throughout my career, and hopefully I don't run out of ideas. So.
I love your example of trial balance to a balance sheet, because someone who's, like I said, started out in finance, not in accounting, if anybody ever hands me a trial balance, I'm just looking at it like it's, it's like a Greek scroll. And can we put this in a financial statement? Because I can't. Yeah, it's just that my brain just doesn't work that way, and so it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. I think it's so I have some comments, especially that video, for example, like where people would see the video and then comment and say, "Hey, like that's such an easy topic. Like, why you're even like bother presenting that?" But that's a fraction of it, right? Like that's maybe the 1 to 5%. But then you have an avalanche of other commenters who are like, "Thank you so much for that," right? So you got to be able to stomach sort of the criticism of the 1% who's going to say like, that's such an obvious thing. Why are you even presenting this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you're a CPA and you've worked in accounting for 15 years, it is easy. But then there's people like me that it's like, this is a lifesaver. So thank you. Yeah. So now I need to go watch that video. That'll be my my continuous learning project for today. So
great.
We are getting close to the end of time here, and there's a couple of questions at the end that we like to ask all of our guests. And we talked about the technical side of everything, but we do like to dive in. And the first one is, what is something that not many people know about you? Maybe something we couldn't find by just going on Google and searching for Bill Hanna.
I was born in Egypt, and I spent my teenage years there. The one thing maybe I've never mentioned is my dad has moved to Libya when I was in high school. So I went to Benghazi, and that's where I went to high school. Other than that, I think my life is pretty maybe a little bit too much public on some of the platforms. But I'm married, and my wife is also an accountant, which makes for fascinating dinner combos. And I have 3 boys, aged 9 to 13. So hopefully one of them will be like the next junior controller or something like that. But yeah,
Continue the family business. Yeah.
yeah, carry exactly. Just keep it going. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, 9 to 13. So you guys are busy. That's
Yeah, less busy. I'll have to say, like, for anyone's listening who is contemplating or have maybe young kids, it's a breathe now for that age. To be honest with you, granted, given thank God their health is good and everything else is good, that age is a lot easier than what it used to be before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm fully on the other side. We're empty nesters now, so it's just my wife and I in the house, and it's never been easier than it is right now. So that's great.
Yeah.
I miss the kids, but it's
Too easy. Yeah,
it's
yeah, absolutely.
now for everybody's favorite question.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite Excel function and why?
Favorite Excel function is probably Command. I'm a Mac user, so Command open bracket takes you to the source of where the information is coming from, and that's kind of like the closest I'll ever get to teleportation. So
I love that you're a Mac user. I've been a Mac user for 25 years, and everybody thinks, how can you be a finance guy and be on a Mac? And back in the day, I used to run, Parallels, dual boot, and I'd run Windows within my Mac so I could get the full Excel. And honestly, as you move up, the level of complexity that I have to build into models is not what it used to be. So Excel on the Mac is fine for me. And I love not having all the pop-ups and updates and everything that come in the Windows machines. So I love when I come across another Mac user.
1,000%. Me too. When you see one, you're like, hey, like, yeah, that's my tribe. But yeah, try teaching an Excel course when you're a Mac user. That was a nightmare. But anyway, like, I think because when you speak to audience who use PC, you'd have to have 2 brains of like the shortcuts and all that. But no, Mac is just a lot. And it used to be in the past, there was a lot of limitation on using Excel on Mac, but it's just not true anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been great. And we'll put information in the show notes too. But how can our listeners connect with you if they want to learn more and find out about the courses and all that? Where should we direct them?
Go to YouTube. The Financial Controller is my channel. My website is the Controller Academy. If you put that into any search, you'll find it. And take a look. There's some stuff that I'm teaching on there that's been valuable. So have a look at it.
Well, Bill, this has been a great episode. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Glenn. Really appreciate being on the show.